Lena kept her eyes on the digital clock above the stove because it felt safer than looking at the small body on the couch. The numbers glowed to 17 a.m. in a sharp red that made the kitchen seem colder than it was. The apartment was too quiet except for the thin, ragged sound of Mateo trying to breathe. "Mom," he whispered, his voice buried under the weight on his chest. "It hurts when I take a big breath." "I know, baby," she said, kneeling beside him. Her hands shook as she brushed damp hair from his forehead. "Little breaths, okay? Just little ones for now." His skin burned under her palm. She had already given him medicine hours ago, but his fever kept climbing. His t-shirt clung to him with sweat. Each breath sounded like air trying to scrape through a narrow pipe. "I'm cold," he murmured, even though sweat slid down his temple. She swallowed hard. "I'm gonna get your shoes, okay? We're going to the hospital." His eyes fluttered, half open. "Now?" "Yeah, now." She moved fast, grabbing his worn sneakers from beside the door, the ones with the fraying laces he loved because they still had traces of blue lightning bolts on the sides. Her fingers fumbled as she tied them, and she cursed under her breath when the lace slipped away from her. "Mom?" Mateo asked, his voice small. "Are you mad?" "Not at you," she said. "Never at you." She ran to the bedroom and yanked open the drawer where she kept everything important. Old insurance cards, crumpled pay stubs from the diner, a manila folder full of letters stamped in red, past due. She grabbed it all and shoved it into her bag. There was no time to organize, no time to pretend she was in control. When she lifted Mateo into her arms, he felt heavier than he had when he was little, but somehow more fragile. His arms circled her neck without strength. His breath warmed her collarbone, broken by little gasps. "Lock the door," he whispered, and she almost laughed at the familiarity of it. "Yeah, okay," she said. "Watch my hands, super spy." She reached back, twisted the lock, and pulled the door closed with her foot. The hallway smelled like old paint and someone's leftover dinner. The stairs felt steeper than usual. Halfway down, she had to stop to catch her own breath, pressing Mateo closer as if she could push some of her air into him. "Mom, are we gonna be late?" he asked. "There's no late for this," she said. "We're going as fast as we can." Outside, the night pressed down heavy and humid. Streetlights threw pools of yellow onto cracked pavement. Her little car waited under a leaning tree, hood speckled with last week's rain. She opened the back door and eased Mateo onto the seat. "Seatbelt," he whispered, eyes drooping. "Got you," she answered, pulling it across him and clicking it in place. She rested her forehead against his for a second, just 1 second, then closed the door and ran around to the driver's side. The engine coughed before it started. She whispered, "Please," to no one in particular, and twisted the key again. The car caught with a shudder and she backed out, hands tight on the wheel. The road to St. Andrew's Hospital was only 15 minutes in normal traffic, but every red light felt like an insult dot at a long light. She glanced in the rearview mirror. Mateo's head had tipped to the side, his lips parted. For a terrifying second, she thought he had stopped breathing. "Mateo?" she said sharply. His eyelids fluttered. "Yeah, stay with me, okay?" "I'm trying," he whispered. She ignored the light and turned on a red, tires squealing. A horn blared behind her, but she didn't look back. When the hospital finally rose ahead, all glass and concrete, her chest eased a fraction. Blue letters spelled emergency above bright doors. People went into hospitals and came out better, she told herself. That was how it worked. It had to. She parked crooked in a short-term spot and jumped out, her bag slamming against her hip. She opened the back door, unbuckled Mateo, and pulled him close again. His arms dangled a little more now. "Almost there," she murmured. The automatic doors sighed open as she entered the bright lobby. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and stale coffee. A TV in the corner showed some late-night show, laughter muffled under the hum of fluorescent lights. A handful of people sat in plastic chairs, eyes dull with waiting. She went straight to the admissions desk, where a woman with tired eyes and perfect nails looked up from her screen. "Hi," Lena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "My son can't breathe right. His fever's really high." The woman glanced at Mateo, then at her screen. "Insurance card?" she asked. Lena shifted Mateo onto one hip and dug through her bag with her free hand. Papers slipped, corners bent. She finally pulled out a worn blue card and slid it across. The woman typed, the keys clicking too loudly in the quiet space. Her eyebrows pulled together. "It's not showing active," she said. "It should be," Lena replied. "They said there was an extension. I've been trying to catch up on the payments." The woman frowned at the screen. "It lapsed last month. And you don't show on any of our current charity programs." "He can't breathe," Lena said, voice rising. "Can you please just get someone? I'll figure out the rest later, I swear." The woman's eyes softened a little, but her tone stayed flat. "I understand, ma'am, but I have to follow policy. If it's not classified as life-threatening, we can't." "Look at him," Lena snapped. "Listen to him." Mateo's chest moved in shallow, uneven rises. A dry, wheezing sound filled the space between them. "Please," he whispered. "My chest feels tight." A man in a blazer, badge clipped to his pocket, approached the desk. "What's the issue?" he asked. The woman spoke quietly. "Lapsed coverage. No charity. Possible non-emergent." Lena stared at her. "Non-emergent? He can't get air." The man looked at Lena like he had seen this scene 100 times and didn't want to see it again. "Ma'am, our emergency resources are limited. We can offer you information on community clinics that use a sliding scale. There's a free clinic downtown that opens at 8. It's 2:30 in the morning," Lena said. Her voice shook, but anger gave it edges. "He needs help now." The man's gaze flicked to a security guard standing a few feet away, then back. "If you're unable to provide active insurance or a deposit, we can't admit non-emergent cases. It's a liability issue." The word liability slammed into her. She thought of long shifts at the diner, of cleaning offices at night, of counting change at the kitchen table. She thought of every time she had told Mateo, "We're okay. I've got us. What if you're wrong?" She demanded, "What if you send us away and something happens?" "Ma'am," he said, the word stretched then. "I don't make the rules. I enforce them. I can give you a list of payment plans. I don't need a list," she snapped. "I need a doctor." The security guard stepped closer, hands resting near his belt, not threatening exactly, but not casual either. "Let's keep things calm," he said. "Calm?" Lena almost laughed. "My son, Mom," Mateo whispered, fingers digging weakly into her shirt. "Please, it hurts." The sound broke something inside her. She turned him slightly so the man at the desk had no choice but to see his face, pale under the fever's flush. Lips tinged with gray. "If he stops breathing in your lobby," she said quietly, "will that be emergent enough for you?" Silence fell around them. Someone in the waiting area shifted uncomfortably. The TV laughed again, a cruel echo. The man exhaled. "I'm sorry," he said, and she believed he meant it in some distant, helpless way. "We can't treat him if you can't pay." The words hung there, heavy as brick. She felt her face flush with humiliation, with rage, with something deeper she didn't have a name for. She wanted to scream, to knock over the neat stack of clipboards on the counter, to tear down the sign that said welcome in cheerful letters, but Mateo's breath shuddered against her neck, pulling her back. "Come on, baby," she whispered, adjusting her grip. "We're going." She turned away from the desk because she could not stand to look at them 1 second longer. The security guard stepped aside. No one followed. No one called out, "Wait." In the hallway just beyond the lobby, the lights seemed harsher, the floor colder through the thin solace of her shoes. She walked without knowing where she was going, only that forward was the only option left. "Mom?" Mateo's voice was barely there. Are they mad at us?" "No," she said, though she didn't know what the truth was anymore. "They're just wrong." Her arms trembled with his weight and with the crushing fear pressing down on her chest. Somewhere in this building, people were healing, working, saving lives. And somehow, she and her son were on the wrong side of a line drawn in numbers and signatures dotted at the end of the hallway. A sign pointed toward another entrance to the emergency wing. A set of doors that led farther inside past the admissions desk. She stared at it, her heart pounding. "We're not done," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I'm not letting it end here." Lena shifted Mateo in her arms and followed the narrow sign toward the other entrance. Each step felt like she was walking deeper into somewhere she did not belong. Her shoulder throbbed, her lower back ached, and still she held him tighter, afraid that if she loosened her grip even a little, the world would take him. The hallway curved and emptied into a quieter side corridor. A red exit sign hummed above a metal door. To the right, another set of double doors stood half open, a small sign above them reading "Emergency Treatment Authorized Personnel Only." She paused, chest heaving. The words "authorized personnel" were meant for staff, not for mothers with expired insurance and shaking hands. But beyond those doors, faint sounds drifted through, rushed voices, the steady beeping of machines, wheels rolling across linoleum. Life moving. Help happening, she swallowed. "Okay," she murmured to Mateo. "We're gonna borrow a little authorized right now." She nudged the door with her foot. It gave way easier than she expected, opening into a bright, busy space. The air was cooler here, sharper with the smell of alcohol wipes and something metallic. A row of curtain bays lined each side. Nurses in teal and dark blue moved quickly, their faces drawn with concentration and fatigue. No one looked at Lena at first. She was just one more body in a place full of need. But as she stepped further inside, clutching Mateo, a young nurse glanced up from a computer on a rolling cart. The nurse's eyes landed on Mateo's face, then slid to his chest, where each breath came too shallow and too fast. Her posture changed in an instant. She stepped toward them, concern replacing the routine distance. "Hey," the nurse said softly. "What's going on with him?" Lena almost cried from the kindness in that simple question. "He's having trouble breathing, fever. It started today, but it's getting worse. The front desk said I had to leave because my insurance..." Her voice cracked. "They said no." The nurse frowned, glancing toward the main entrance they had come from, then back at Mateo. "How long has he been like this?" "All night," Lena said. It was a cough at first. Then he said his chest hurt. His breathing... She trailed off because the sound of it said enough. The nurse touched Mateo's wrist lightly, checking his pulse. Her lips pressed together. "What's his name?" "Mateo," he whispered weakly before Lena could answer. "When you do that..." "Mateo," the nurse said, watching his chest. "Does it hurt more when you breathe in or out?" "In," he whispered. "Feels sharp." The nurse looked at Lena. "We need to get him on some oxygen and checked out. I'm going to put him in a room, okay?" Relief rushed through Lena so fast it made her dizzy. "Thank you," she said, the words too small for what she felt. The nurse grabbed a nearby wheelchair and lowered the footrest with quick, practiced movements. "Let's transfer him," she said. Lena carefully eased Mateo from her arms into the chair. He winced as he settled, one hand pressed to his chest. "I got you," the nurse murmured. We're gonna help you breathe easier, okay? He nodded, eyes glassy-eyed as she started to wheel him toward an open bay. A sharp voice cut through the air. Hold up. What are you doing with that patient? An older woman in a crisp blazer and ID badge strode toward them, her expression annoyed. She carried a clipboard like a shield. The nurse straightened but kept one hand on the wheelchair. He's in respiratory distress. I'm putting him in room 5. The administrator flipped through a few papers. He hasn't been processed at intake. I don't have time for intake, the nurse replied quietly, looking at Mateo's pale face. He needs oxygen now. The administrator's jaw tightened. Protocol. Intake first unless it's coded critical. I don't see a wristband. Does he have active coverage? Lena felt the fragile calm crumble. They said I don't. They said we had to leave. The administrator's gaze landed on her with a familiar mix of impatience and distant sympathy. Ma'am, I understand this is stressful, but we can't bypass the system. We have procedures for uninsured patients. He is not a procedure, Lena said, voice shaking. He is a child who can't breathe. The nurse's grip tightened on the wheelchair handles. His respirations are fast, his color's off, and he's reporting chest pain. I'm not going to park him in the hallway while we argue paperwork. The administrator glanced toward another desk nearby, where a few staff members pretended not to listen. She lowered her voice, but her words stayed firm. If he's not coded critical, he has to go through intake. We've been told to crack down. No exceptions. Then code him critical, the nurse said. We both know where this could go if we wait. The administrator's eyes flickered, a hint of uncertainty there. For a second, it seemed like she might bend. Then she shook her head. I'm not losing my job over this, she said. You want to take that risk, you call the attending and get authorization. Until then, he goes back to intake. Lena's chest tightened. We already tried intake, she said. They told us we were too poor to be treated. Are you going to say the same thing? The administrator looked caught, torn between the script in her head and the reality in front of her. No one said that, she replied stiffly. But we have to follow billing protocols. There are clinics that open in 5 hours, Lena cut in. What am I supposed to do? Time is breathing to their schedule. Nearby monitors beeped. A baby cried in another room. The world kept moving while they stood there, locked in a standoff. Please, Lena said, the fight draining out of her voice. Please, I'm begging you. Just help him. The administrator's eyes shifted to the nurse. Call the attending, she said. I'm not authorizing this. The nurse reached for the phone clipped to her pocket. As she did, the double doors at the far end of the unit swung open with a soft whoosh. A doctor in a white coat walked in, shrugging out of a dark jacket, a stethoscope hanging around his neck. He looked like he had been awake for too many hours. His dark hair slightly mussed, his eyes tired but alert. The nurse's relief was immediate. Dr. Reyes, she called. We need a quick assessment. He turned toward them, rolling his shoulders like he was trying to shake off the weight of the day. What do we have? He asked, walking closer, focus already narrowing on the wheelchair. On the small boy sitting in it, on the mother standing behind him. Then he saw Lena. He stopped mid-step, as if the floor had shifted beneath him. His hand slipped from his jacket sleeve and hung there. His eyes, deep, familiar, the same ones she had once memorized, locked on her face. For a second, the noise of the emergency unit seemed to fade. Lena felt the old life she had avoided thinking about crash into the one she had been fighting to build. Daniel, she whispered before she could stop herself. His name tasted strange after so many years, like something pulled from the back of a drawer. His eyes widened, the tiredness in them replaced by something raw and stunned. He said nothing, but the way his gaze flicked from her to Mateo and back again spoke louder than any words. She watched understanding start to dawn. slow and terrible, in the furrow of his brow, in the way his mouth parted just slightly. The nurse glanced between them, confused. "You two know each other?" she asked. Lena's throat tightened. The last time she had seen Daniel, she was younger, more hopeful, and far less careful. Back then, they had talked about dreams and cities and futures like they were things they could reach for together. Then he had left with a vague promise and a clean goodbye, choosing a path with clear edges while hers dissolved under her feet. She straightened a little, using anger like armor. "He used to," she said. Her eyes didn't leave his. "A long time ago." Mateo shifted in his chair, looking up at Daniel with foggy curiosity. "Mom," he whispered, pulling lightly at her sleeve. "You know this doctor?" Lena hesitated. The question hung between them, heavy and sharp. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I know him." Daniel took a breath, as if steadying himself. The administrator stepped forward, breaking the spell. "Dr. Reyes," she began briskly, "there's a situation with an uninsured patient." "Intake hasn't processed," he cut her off without looking away from Lena. "How old is he?" he asked, nodding at Mateo. 8, Lena answered automatically. "And how long has he been having trouble breathing?" "Since tonight. It got worse over the last few hours." He crouched down so he was eye level with Mateo, up close. Lena could see the slight tremor in his hands as he rested them lightly on the armrests. "Hey, buddy," he said, voice softer than she remembered. "Can you tell me where it hurts the most?" Mateo lifted a shaky hand to his chest. "Right here," he whispered. "Feels like someone is sitting on me." Daniel's jaw clenched. He looked up at the nurse. "Get him on oxygen and insert vitals. Let's move him to a room." The administrator bristled. "Dr. Reyes, with respect, we need to follow. I'll take responsibility," he said, finally glancing her way. There was a steel in his voice that hadn't been there a moment ago. "If there's a problem, they can talk to me." The nurse didn't wait for more permission. She started pushing the wheelchair down the hall. Lena followed, her heart pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with the hospital's harsh lights or the beeping machines. As they moved, Daniel walked alongside, close enough that she could feel the familiar warmth of his presence. Close enough that old memories she had buried deep started to stir. Beside her, Mateo turned his head just enough to look at Daniel again. "Are you a good guy?" he asked, his words thin but clear. The question hung in the space between them like a challenge, like a mirror neither adult was ready to face. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it, eyes flicking briefly to Lena before he answered. "We're going to do everything we can to help you breathe easier," he said quietly. "That's what I can promise you right now." Lena watched him, the past and present colliding in the narrow hallway. For the first time since the night began, she felt a different kind of fear rising in her chest. One that had nothing to do with hospital policy or unpaid bills. They rolled Mateo into a small exam room where the lights felt too bright and everything smelled like bleach and plastic. The nurse moved quickly, fitting a nasal cannula under his nose, taping the thin tubes gently against his cheeks. A monitor beeped to life beside the bed, tracing his heartbeat in small, nervous spikes. "Deep breaths if you can, Mateo," the nurse said. "This'll help." He nodded, his eyes half closed, the clear tubing fogging slightly with each exhale. Lena stood near his head, her hand wrapped around his fingers. She could feel the slight tremor in them, the effort each breath took out. Daniel stood at the foot of the bed, watching the monitor, his expression a tight mask. Lena could see the muscles shift in his jaw, the way his shoulders squared, like he was bracing himself from all directions at once. "Pulse ox is low," the nurse murmured. "Respirations are fast. Temp's still high." Daniel nodded. "Let's get a chest x-ray and blood work. Start him on fluids." He spoke in clipped, practiced tones, but his eyes kept drifting back to Mateo's face. Then to Lena's. When the nurse stepped out to arrange the tests, the room grew quieter. The monitor beeped steadily, oxygen hissed softly, and somewhere down the hall, a cart squeaked by. It was just the three of them now, and the weight of that settled slowly over the room. Lena tried to focus on Mateo's breathing, in, out, in, out. Each breath meant he was still here. But her awareness kept skidding back to Daniel, who was closer now than he had been in years. He took a step toward her. "Lena," she stiffened. "Don't," she said. "Not right now." His gaze dropped for a moment. He needed oxygen. You did the right thing bringing him in, no matter what intake said. "That's not what this is about," she replied, her voice low. "This is about him getting better. That's it." His eyes moved to Mateo. "How long has he been sick?" "Since yesterday," she said. "It was a cold at first. Kids at school have had it, but tonight it got worse. I thought it was just a bad cough." Then he said his chest hurt and her throat closed. "I should have brought him sooner." "Hey," he said quietly. "You brought him now. That's what matters." She let out a bitter laugh. "Tell that to the people who tried to send us home because we're not profitable enough." He flinched a little. "I'll deal with that," he said. "Later. Right now, I need to know more about him. Does he have asthma? Any lung issues before this?" She hesitated, an old instinct kicking in, the one that had taught her to keep certain things close. "No asthma," she said finally. "He's had bronchitis once. Mostly healthy otherwise. He gets colds, ear infections. Regular kid stuff. Any hospitalizations?" "Once, when he was a baby. High fever. They ruled out meningitis. We left with a bill I'm still paying." He nodded slowly, absorbing each word. "Does he take any regular medications?" "No." As they talked, his eyes lingered on Mateo's face, tracing features Lena knew he recognized. The slope of the nose, the curve of the mouth, the dark white eyes that watched everything even when he was exhausted. "Lena," he said quietly, voice catching on her name. "How old did you say he is?" She heard the real question under that one. A memory rose uninvited. His hands on the steering wheel the night he'd driven away. The last look on his face when he said he had to go. That this was the chance he couldn't waste. 8, she answered, her tone flat. "When's his birthday?" His voice was careful now, like he was walking up to the edge of a cliff. She stared at him for a long moment. "Why does that matter?" His eyes held hers. "Because I need a full history," he said, but the excuse sounded thin even to him. She exhaled slowly. "May 2nd? Something in his face shifted. She saw the calculation happen, saw the timeline lay itself out behind his eyes. The months? The years. The gap between when he left and when she found out she was pregnant. He took a small step back, as if the realization had physical force. His hand came up, fingers pressing lightly to his forehead. "Lena," he whispered, and there was a crack in it now. "Is he—" Before he could finish, Mateo stirred. "Mom," he mumbled. "I'm thirsty." Lena moved closer to the bed, seizing the interruption like a lifeline. "You can have a little water once they say it's okay, baby," she said softly, brushing hair from his forehead. "They're just getting everything ready." Daniel watched her, then looked at Mateo again, his expression a mixture of awe and regret. It was like he was seeing two ghosts at once, the boy in the bed and the younger version of himself who had once talked about building a life he never stayed for. "I didn't know," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. "You didn't tell me." She turned, eyes flashing. "You left," she said. "You made your choice. I made mine. I left for school," he argued, his voice still low but edged with hurt. "We talked about it. You said you understood? I understood that you were choosing a future that didn't include me, she shot back. And I was stupid enough to pretend that was okay? He stared at her, as if trying to line up the girl he remembered with the woman standing in front of him now, holding onto the bed rail like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. If I had known, you would have what? She cut in, stayed. Given up everything you worked for? We both know that's not true. You were always going to choose the thing that made sense on paper. That's who you are. He flinched as if she had slapped him. You don't get to decide who I am after all this time. And you don't get to walk in here and act like these last 8 years were some kind of misunderstanding. She said. The monitor beeped a little faster, and both of them turned immediately. Mateo's chest rose more rapidly, his face pinched. Hey, Daniel said quickly, moving to the other side of the bed. We're right here, Mateo. Try to take slow breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Like blowing out a candle. Mateo tried to follow, his breaths choppy but gradually slowing with the rhythm Daniel set. Lena watched, torn between anger and gratitude and something more complicated sitting heavy between them. The nurse returned with another tech, pushing equipment for a portable X-ray. They slid a hard plate behind Mateo's back and covered his lower body with a lead apron. The tech spoke gently, guiding him through the process. Daniel stepped back, giving them room, but his eyes never left the monitor. When the X-ray was done and they left with the images, the nurse adjusted the 4-line in Mateo's arm. You're doing great, she said. We're going to find out what's going on and fix it, okay? He nodded weakly. Am I gonna have to stay? Maybe for a little while, she answered. Just until we know you're safe. After she left again, the room felt smaller, crowded with unspoken things. Mateo's eyelids drooped, heavy from fever and exhaustion. Mom, he whispered, barely opening his eyes. Is he gonna stay too? Lena blinked. Who, baby? He shifted his gaze toward Daniel. The doctor. Daniel swallowed. I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. I'll be here. Mateo seemed to accept that. His fingers relaxed in Lena's hand as he drifted further into a light sleep. His breathing, while still labored, had a steadier rhythm with the oxygen's help. Silence settled again. The kind that wasn't peaceful, just full. Why didn't you call me? Daniel asked finally, his voice rough. Even once? She stared at him. Do you have any idea what it felt like, watching you pack your car and talk about how this was your shot, your one chance? You made it very clear where I fit in that picture. I asked you to come with me, he said. To what? She countered. Sleep on someone's couch while you studied? Work 3 jobs in a city where I knew no one? You said it like it was easy. Like I could just cut myself free and float after you. I thought we were a team, he said quietly. We were until it stopped being convenient, she replied. And then you left. And then I was alone. And then I found out I wasn't just responsible for me anymore. He looked at Mateo, then back at her. You should have told me, he said. I missed his whole life. I didn't even know he existed. Pain flickered across her face. Do you think that decision was easy? She asked. I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand for days, weeks. Your number pulled up. My thumb hovering over the call button. And every time I saw your face when you talked about not getting distracted, about needing to stay focused if you were going to make it. His shoulders sagged. That wasn't what I meant. It was what I heard, she said. And then the months went by. And I thought, if I call now, I become the reason your life splits in half. I become the girl who derailed you. I couldn't do that. Not to you and not to him. And what about what you did to you? He asked, his gaze searching her face. To both of you? She looked away toward the scuffed tile floor. I did what I had to do, she said. We got through. We're still getting through. He nodded slowly, his eyes shining with something he didn't let fall. I would have wanted to know, he said. Even if it complicated everything, even if it hurt. Well, she replied, voice soft but firm. Now you do. The truth hung there between them. 8 years late, the nurse returned with preliminary results on a tablet, breaking the spell again. Daniel took it, scanning quickly. His brow furrowed. What is it? Lena asked. He looked up, his professional focus sliding back into place. The X-ray shows signs of pneumonia, he said carefully. His labs confirm an infection. His oxygen levels are too low for us to send him home. He needs to be admitted and started on IV antibiotics right away. Relief and fear crashed into Lena at the same time. But he'll be okay, right? If he gets the treatment? If we act now, Daniel answered. It's serious, but it's treatable. We caught it before it got worse. That's what matters. Her knees went weak with the force of it. She gripped the bed rail until her fingers ached. Okay, she whispered. Okay, do whatever he needs. I'm going to push for an immediate admission and override the earlier decision, he said. I'll handle the authorization. You can do that? She asked. He met her eyes. I'm the attending on tonight, he said. And I'm not letting them send him out like this. There was more in his gaze now, not just medical resolve, but something deeply personal, a fierce, late-breaking protectiveness that shook her more than she wanted to admit. Daniel, she said quietly, don't get yourself in trouble over us. Too late for that not to happen, he replied. The only question now is what I'm going to do about it. Before she could answer, Mateo shifted again, half awake. His eyes fluttered open, landing on Daniel. Are you a good guy? He asked, the earlier question returning. Softer, but more focused now that Daniel looked at him, really looked at him. And then at Lena. Years of choices, of silence, of distance condensed into this one fragile moment. I'm trying to be, he said finally. Starting tonight, Lena felt something inside her move, not forgiveness, not yet, but the faintest outline of a possibility she had never let herself imagine. The machines kept beeping, the oxygen kept flowing, and for the first time since this night began, the future did not feel entirely closed off. Daniel stepped out into the hallway with the tablet still in his hand, the glow from the screen fading as it dimmed. The emergency unit buzzed with motion, but he moved as if cutting through water, each step heavier than the last. At the end of the corridor, fluorescent lights shone down on a door marked admin authorized staff only. He pushed it open without knocking. Inside, a long table cut through the middle of the room. A few members of the overnight admin team sat with coffee cups and spreadsheets, their faces lit by computer screens. The same administrator from earlier looked up sharply. Dr. Reyes, she said. We're in the middle of, we need to talk about the boy you tried to send away, he said. Mateo Ramirez, 8 years old. Severe pneumonia. Low oxygen saturation. He's being admitted under my authority. Her mouth tightened. We discussed that case. Non-emergent by coding standards. Uninsured. We're already over our charity quota this quarter. He set the tablet on the table, finger tapping the image of Mateo's X-ray. This is not non-emergent. You refused intake on a child with developing respiratory failure because his mother couldn't pay. That's not just bad policy. That's dangerous. Another man at the table cleared his throat. Our hands are tied, doctor. The board has been clear. We have to reduce losses from uncompensated care. Daniel looked at each of them in turn, feeling something hot and relentless rising in his chest. You want to talk losses? Let's talk about what happens if that boy crashes at home because we pushed him out. Do you know what his lungs would look like in 12 hours? Do you know how fast kids can decompensate? You don't get to make those decisions from a spreadsheet. The administrator crossed her arms. We're following guidelines set by people above us. We're not monsters, Dr. Reyes. Then stop acting like policy is a shield, he said. It doesn't protect you from the moral cost of what you almost did. Silence spread across the room for a moment, broken only by the hum of an air vent. The man with the coffee spoke again. What exactly are you asking for? I'm not asking, Daniel replied. I'm informing you. I've admitted him under emergency necessity. I'm filing for charity coverage and coding his treatment as uncompensated critical care. If anyone has a problem with that, they can page me and we can discuss it in front of the ethics committee. That's not how this works, the administrator said. That's exactly how it works, he countered. Because at the end of the day, my license isn't tied to your balance sheet. It's tied to whether I treat patients who walk into this hospital needing help. The room tensed. He felt the risk in his words, the way they could ripple into reprimands, evaluations, maybe worse. But something had cracked open in him the moment he saw Mateo's face, and he knew there was no way back to the man he had been. Finally, the man with the coffee looked down at the tablet, then at the others. Sign the charity authorization, he said quietly. We'll sort the paperwork out later. The administrator hesitated, then picked up a form and signed, the pen scratching loudly in the stillness. This isn't sustainable, she muttered. If we make exceptions, we didn't make an exception, Daniel said. We corrected a mistake. He picked up the tablet and turned to leave, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Back in Mateo's room, the light seemed softer, or maybe his eyes had adjusted. Mateo slept, his chest rising in a more even rhythm now, though every breath still sounded like effort. The 4-line dripped steadily. The monitor numbers hovered in a safer range. Lena sat in the chair beside the bed, shoulders slumped, exhaustion carving deep shadows under her eyes. When she saw Daniel, she straightened a little. Well, she asked. He's admitted, Daniel said. Full coverage under emergency charity care. They'll move him to pediatrics once a room opens. Relief hit her so hard her eyes filled. She blinked quickly, not wanting the tears to spill. So they're not going to send us home? No, he said. They're not. She exhaled, a sound that came from somewhere deep. Thank you, she said. I don't know how you... I've been trying to get them to listen to me for an hour. He leaned against the counter, feeling the distance between them like a physical thing. They shouldn't need someone like me to make them care, he said. But sometimes the system only listens to voices it recognizes. Tonight, that was mine. She watched him, her expression softening for a moment. You could have looked the other way, she said. Signed whatever form they wanted and gone home at the end of your shift. I've done enough looking the other way in my life, he replied quietly. I'm done with that. Silence again. Not empty, just full of everything they hadn't said yet. Can I ask you something? He said finally. She braced herself. You're the doctor. He gave a small, humorless smile. Not that kind of question. She looked at Mateo, then back at him. Ask. Does he know anything? He asked. About me? About you existing? She said. No. About you in particular? She shook her head. I never had a name to give him. Not one I could say without explaining why you weren't there. He flinched, but he nodded. What did you tell him about his dad? That he lives far away, she said. That sometimes people love each other and still end up in different places. That it wasn't his fault. Wasn't his fault, Daniel repeated, the words landing heavy. Was it mine? She looked directly at him. You leaving? That was your choice. You not knowing about him? She paused, weighing the words. That was mine. He swallowed. I don't know how to start making that right, he admitted. Not with you. Not with him. You can't fix 8 years in one night, she said. You're not that good. His lips twitched, a fleeting hint of the old smile she remembered. I don't want to fix 8 years, he said. I don't want to miss any more. She studied him, searching for the young man she had loved in the lines on his face. He was older now, more tired, but there was a steadiness in him that hadn't been there before, a weight that came from making real decisions for real lives. What do you even want? She asked softly. Because once you walk back out that door, things go back to how they were. You have your life. We have ours. He looked at Mateo, who shifted in his sleep, mumbling something unintelligible. I want to be part of his life, he said. In whatever way doesn't hurt him. I know I don't get to demand that. I know I come last in that decision, but I'm here, and I'm not running this time. Her chest ached at the quiet certainty in his voice. You say that now, when everything feels urgent, she replied. But what happens when the shift ends, when the adrenaline wears off, when you're staring at your calendar, trying to squeeze us between meetings and rounds, and whatever else you've built since you walked away? He didn't look away. Then I rearranged the calendar, he said. Because apparently my son has been breathing on this planet for 8 years and I didn't even know. I can't live with that kind of blindness again. The word son hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament. Lena swallowed. You can't just say the word and expect it to fit right away, she said. For you or for him? I know, he answered. That's why I'm not asking you to define anything tonight. I'm just asking you not to close the door before I even reach it. She leaned back in the chair, rubbing her eyes with the heels of her hands. You want a chance, she murmured. I want several, he said. To earn any piece of this you're willing to let me have. But I'll start with one. He moved closer to the bed, looking at Mateo again, softer now. The boy's features had relaxed in sleep, and in that calm, Daniel could see the full outline of himself there. It was like looking into a mirror that showed not just the past, but everything he hadn't known he'd lost. Do you remember that summer at the lake? Lena asked suddenly, her voice distant. You said you were afraid of deep water. He blinked, thrown for a second. Yeah, he said quietly. You dared me to jump off the dock anyway? And you wouldn't, she said. You said, I need to see the bottom. I need to know what I'm diving into. He nodded slowly, realizing where she was going. This isn't like that, he said. I'm not hesitating because I don't know what's under the surface. I'm standing on the dock looking at the part of my life that should have always been there. She eyed him. So what are you going to do? He looked at Mateo, then at her. I'm already in the water, he said. I just didn't realize how deep it was until now. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The hospital moved quietly around them, footsteps in the hall, distant conversations muffled by doors. The world outside their small room felt far away. Eventually, a pediatric nurse came to say a room was ready upstairs. They gently moved Mateo's bed, rolling him through sleeping corridors and into a smaller, softer room with painted clouds on the ceiling. Lena walked beside the bed, one hand resting lightly near his shoulder. Daniel followed, a step behind, as if afraid to assume a closer place yet unable to stay away. Once Mateo was settled, the nurse adjusted his blankets and checked his lines. He'll be on antibiotics and oxygen through the night, she explained. We'll monitor him closely. These kids can turn around pretty quickly once the meds kick in. Thank you, Lena said, sincere and quiet. The nurse left them alone again. Dawn's first gray light pressed faintly at the edges of the curtains. The long night was finally starting to bend toward morning. You should rest, Daniel said. You look like you're about to fall over. She gave a tired half smile. I'm afraid if I close my eyes, someone's going to come in and tell me this was all some mistake and we have to leave. They won't, he said. Not on my watch. She looked at him, searching for any hint of empty comfort. She didn't find it. Only a steady resolve she wasn't used to associating with him. "What about you?" she asked. "Don't you have other patients?" "Another shift. My shift ended an hour ago," he admitted. "I signed out. I'm supposed to be home right now." "Then go," she said. "You've done more than enough." He hesitated. "I'll go shower, change, call the day team. I'll be back later today to check on him." "You don't have to," she said, but there was no bite to it. Only fatigue and a thin edge of fear. "I know," he replied. "I'm going to anyway." He moved to the side of Mateo's bed and gently adjusted the blanket, as if committing the simple act of care to memory. Then he straightened and looked at Lena. Will you tell him about me?" he asked. "Not everything, just something." She thought for a moment. "I'll tell him the doctor who helped him breathe is named Daniel," she said, "and that he's someone I used to know." His face flickered with something like gratitude and grief mixed together. "That's more than I had yesterday," he said. He took a step back, then stopped. "Lena? Yeah?" "I'm sorry," he said, "for leaving the way I did, for not asking the right questions back then, for not looking back when I should have. None of that changes what you went through, or what I missed. But you should know I'm sorry." She held his gaze, seeing the boy he had been and the man he had become overlapping for a moment. "I don't know what to do with that yet," she said honestly. "But I hear you." He nodded, accepting that as all he had earned for now. Then he left, footsteps fading down the hall. Hours passed. The sky outside lightened from gray to blue. Mateo's breathing grew less strained. Once, he woke enough to drink a little water, then drifted back to sleep. Lena watched him, fatigue finally pulling at her eyelids. She rested her head on the edge of the bed, still holding his hand, and let herself doze. When she woke, softer light filled the room. Mateo was watching her, his eyes clearer than they had been all night. "Hey," she whispered. "How's your chest?" "Better," he said. "The air doesn't hurt as much." Tears pricked her eyes. "Good, that's good. Did we get in trouble?" he asked. "For what?" "For coming here when we're, you know." He frowned. "When we don't have the cards they wanted." She squeezed his hand. "We didn't do anything wrong," she said. "Sometimes grown-ups get so worried about rules and money, they forget why they're here in the first place. But some of them remember. Like your nurse, like Dr. Daniel." "He said he was going to come back," Mateo said. "Do you think he will?" She thought of Daniel's face, the way his voice had steadied when he said he wanted to be there. "I think he will," she answered, as if called by the words. There was a soft knock on the door. Daniel stepped in, wearing fresh scrubs, his hair still slightly damp. He looked tired but more settled. "Hey," he said quietly. "How's my most important patient?" Mateo managed a small smile. "Breathing better," he said. "The beeping's not as loud anymore." "That's what we like to hear," Daniel replied, moving closer. He checked the monitor, listened to Mateo's chest with his stethoscope, nodding at the improvement. "Lungs still a little junky, but much better. You scared us last night, you know." "Sorry," Mateo murmured. "Don't be sorry," Daniel said. "Just keep getting stronger." As he straightened, Mateo looked between them. "Do you guys know each other from before?" he asked. Lena and Daniel shared a quick glance. "Yeah," Lena said slowly. "We do, like friends?" Mateo asked. "Something like that," Daniel answered. "We used to be important to each other. Are you important now?" Mateo asked, eyes sharp in that way kids had when they went straight to the heart of things. Lena hesitated. "We're figuring that out," she said. "One step at a time." Daniel took a breath. "Mateo," he said, his voice gentle but steady, "would it be okay if I came to see you again? Even when you're not sick?" Mateo blinked. Like, at our house? If your mom says it's okay, Daniel replied, glancing at Lena. I'd like to get to know you. Not just as your doctor. Why? Mateo asked. Pure curiosity in his voice stopped Daniel held his gaze. Because you matter to me, he said. More than you know yet? Something in Mateo's expression shifted, some instinct catching an echo of truth, even if he didn't have the words for it. He looked at his mother, then back at Daniel. Okay, he said slowly. You can come, but you have to bring those popsicles they give here. The good kind. Daniel smiled, a real one now. Deal. After a while, he stepped back, letting mother and son have their space. He moved to the window, looking out at the city waking up, then turned back to Lena. I'll bring the social worker up later, he said. We'll get you set up with follow-up care, medications, maybe some support for the bills you already have. There are programs. I can help you navigate them. She studied him, the offer digging into a place she usually kept armored. You don't have to fix everything, she said softly. I know, he replied. But I can try to make some of it less heavy. She nodded, a quiet acceptance. We'll see, she said. One day at a time. He looked at Mateo, then back at her. That's all I'm asking for, he said. The room filled with simple sounds, the beeping monitor, the low hiss of oxygen, Mateo's softer breathing. The crisis had passed, but something new had begun. Tentative and unfinished. Outside the window, the sun finally pushed fully over the horizon. Light spilling across the hospital walls, warming cold concrete and tired faces. Inside, in that small pediatric room, 3 lives that had once moved apart now edged closer together. Not in some perfect, scripted way, but in the messy, fragile, human way that change usually happens, later, after rounds, after paperwork, after whispered conversations with social workers and case managers. Lena sat alone with her thoughts and her sleeping son. She thought about all the nights she had faced alone, about all the doors that had been closed in her face. She thought about the way one had finally opened, not because of a miracle, but because someone on the inside decided to act like a human being instead of a rule. When Daniel returned that afternoon with a folder of resources and a small bag of hospital popsicles, she let him pull up a chair. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a promise. But it was a beginning dot as their voices blended quietly in the pale light of the room, discussing follow-up appointments and school schedules, and maybe meeting at the park when Mateo was strong enough. The story they had been avoiding for 8 years, slowly, carefully, started to be rewritten dot, and if anyone listening felt the pull of it, the ache of unfairness, the cost of silence, the power of one person refusing to look away, they might carry that feeling with them into their own lives, their own choices, their own chances to stand up when it would be easier to stay seated dot, because sometimes it takes just one person pushing back against that's just how it is to give someone else another breath, another morning, another shot at a different future. Real compassion means putting people before policies. One person's courage to do what's right, especially inside a broken system, can save a life and begin to heal years of silence, regret, and hurt.